Good afternoon, and welcome to the ALCTS webinar on electronic resources, workflows, and tools. I'm Maria Pincus, a virtual member of the ALCTS Continuing Education Committee, and will be your host for this afternoon's webinar. Today's presenters are Don Hale, Kari Schmidt, and Laura Wrubel. They will be offering this webinar in 3 parts. Part 1, Electronic Resource Management, Evolution of Workflows and Tools, will be presented by Don Hale. Don is the head of Technical Services at the Sheridan Libraries of the Johns Hopkins University. She is currently on the editorial board of the ALCTS Papers series and is a member of the OCLC Research Library Metadata Partners Focus Group and the OCLC eResources Advisory Council. Part 2, ER Workflows and Supplemental Practices, will be presented by Kari Schmidt. Kari is currently the Technical Services Manager at the Montgomery College Libraries, where she oversees the Centralized Technical Services Department, which includes the Electronic Resources, Cataloging, and Acquisitions programs. Laura Wrubel will be our presenter for Part 3, ERM and User Interfaces. Laura is the eResources Content Manager at George Washington University Libraries. She is responsible for access to eResources and is involved in supporting and improving the library's link resolver, discovery layer, and systems for managing eResources. A few things to keep in mind for today's presentation. GoToWebinar does not have interactive chat capabilities, but if you wish to comment during today's session using Twitter, you may use the hashtag you see on the screen. Twitter feeds will not be monitored. If you have any questions for the presenters, please type them at any time into the box entitled Questions. Questions will be answered as time permits at the end of the presentation. Those which remain unanswered while we are on the air will be answered offline and the responses sent to all attendees. This webinar is being recorded. You should be receiving an email with a link to the recording, the presentation slides, and an evaluation form for the webinar within 2 days. Please take time to fill it out, since it will be useful to the committee for planning future events. And now, as I leave you with Don, there may be a slight delay.
Thank you for inviting me to speak about the evolution of eResource workflows and tools. Today I'm going to provide an overview of electronic resource management tools that we saw in first-generation approaches that have been developed during the past 10 years and focused on subscription management. I'm also going to speak about second-generation approaches that started to appear in around 2012 to manage the entire electronic resource life cycle. And I'm also going to share my thoughts of where I believe we're going next. Library budgets, staffing, and goals factor into their approach for tracking suppliers, subscriptions, licenses, and holdings. Initial tools that libraries have used include access databases and spreadsheets. Several libraries developed homegrown systems. There have been consortially developed systems such as the Colorado Alliance's Gold Rush eResource Management System. There are several commercial standalone ERMs such as Meridian, Verity, 360, Fly Serial Solutions, and EBSCO. III's Integrated Resource Management is within their ILS. And more recently, there have been development of open source systems such as Coral, GoKB, and the GIST Knowledge Base Plus. As libraries corral the management of eResources, DLF's ERMI has influenced the development of functional requirements of knowledge-based tools, their data structures, and entity relationships, of workflows for trials and licenses, as well as standards and best practices for the technologies used. Standards that improve the supply chain workflows with knowledge-based tools include NISO's KBART. Phase 1 focused on the metadata exchange between content providers and knowledge-based developers. Phase 2, which is now underway, is focusing on the metadata transfer for ebooks, conference proceedings, open access publications, and consortial purchasing. NISO PI-J concentrated on the accurate use of ISSNs for earlier later serial titles and for title changes. NISO's IOTA evaluated open URL implementations across content providers. During the past years, libraries have benefited from centralized systems to manage trials, package subscriptions, their renewals and cancellations. Central systems support recording of license terms, sample license clauses, institutional legal context, as well as a place to provide links to full-text licenses. Central systems also store administrative information such as accounts and passwords, vendor contact names, phone numbers, emailing, U.S. email addresses. Central systems also facilitate workflow management and handoffs between various groups, which Kari will speak about in more detail. Some provided links to use statistics and supported reporting. However, many workflows are still outside first-generation electronic resource management systems. Selection is still done in book vendor and subscription agent systems. Communications with vendors and among internal library departments are still done in email. They're also found in paper documents in various filing cabinets or on title list spreadsheets. Who's working on problems and tracking progress on the resolution is done often in email, or some libraries use Jira, Request Tracker, Blogger, or Basecamp. In addition, ebook patron-driven acquisitions is often managed by the ILS. Proprietary standalone electronic resource management systems often are not interoperable with an open URL link resolver such as SFX, EBSCO SmartLinks, or 360 Link. Order and cost data is managed in the ILS acquisitions module, and there's no interoperability with payments made via the enterprise financial system. Standalone systems are not interoperable with the online catalog or with the separate discovery layer systems, the proxy or interlibrary loan systems. Vendors have heard these concerns, and starting around in 2012, they began to release tools that provide more holistic management of the electronic resource lifecycle and support workflows to streamline processes. While still in development, these web-scale systems, such as ALMA, OCLC WMS, and Tota Qualiole, unify acquisitions, tracking, licensing, and discovery. Laura will share how their APIs allow libraries to integrate with book vendor and subscription agent systems, link resolvers, and the proxy. Standards and best practices supporting these second-generation e-resource management tools include Onyx PL that supports communication of license terms for digital publications in a very structured and highly encoded form. NISO's Open Discovery Initiative, which is currently out for comment, defines standards and best practices for discovery service indexing of journals, ebooks, and other electronic information. Uniform use statistic counting is facilitated by Counter and harvesting of use data by Sushi. The Cost for Resource Exchange Protocol facilitates transfer of cost information from ILS acquisitions modules to electronic resource management systems so that information in one system can be shared in another, and it eliminates the need for redundant input of cost data. While a great deal of progress has been made, there are still workflow challenges common to both first and second generation ERM systems. There's uneven publisher metadata. A knowledge base may totally lack some subscribed titles. There are inconsistent use of package names from one knowledge base to another, as well as variations in coverage information. Some publishers have license restrictions in sharing their metadata and holdings with knowledge-based providers. This is especially true for ebooks. In addition, there are variations in the time that a knowledge base is updated. Some publishers are very slow to share their title, holdings, and URL changes with knowledge-based providers. Then there's the time the knowledge-based provider needs to load it in their system because the publisher data is in a very proprietary format, and then distribute it to libraries, after which then the libraries have the local staff time to implement the changes. So anywhere from several weeks to months can occur before the end user sees the changes, and that of course leads to user frustration. Meanwhile, content changes continue to happen at the publisher level. In addition, the landscape of what libraries need to manage continues to change. Publishers are reinventing themselves and thinking about selling access to book chapters as well as articles. There's growth in open access. Libraries are seeing new purchasing models develop and doing more consortial purchases, as well as developing shared electronic collections among several libraries. Some databases are transforming to linked data sets, and then there's the promised impact of linked data. These new directions have tremendous workflow impacts in terms of scale of what's to manage. At my library, purchased electronic resource titles comprise a third of all the titles in our collection, and that happened in the past 5 years. If this trend continues in the next 5 years, current approaches for managing e-resources are just not sustainable, especially since libraries are reducing their technical services staff. On the vendor side, vendors are automating data and metadata creation to reduce redundancies of effort and to minimize data inconsistencies so that data can be easily shared, reused, and repurposed. This has led to some new standards and tools that facilitate data exchange, indexing, and data reuse and repurposing. The ISTC for registering textual works will facilitate administrating copyright and automated rights clearance. Automated name identity tools such as ISNI or ORCID IDs and identify names so that they can work with rights holders' discovery systems and library discovery tools. Onyx has several schemas that support representing and communicating book and serial product information in a consistent way for publishers and their supply chain partners. DOIs provide granular level links to chapters and illustrations. These new standards and tools are positioning the publishing and library communities and putting them down a new path in automated data sharing and exchange in next generation e-resource management. I believe we will be seeing the dynamic exchange of e-resource data between publishers, vendors, discovery systems, the enterprise procurement and financial system, link resolvers, and proxies. This new direction will enable data to be used and reused. It will lighten our workloads and enable libraries to provide users timely connections to an increasingly rich electronic resource experience. Thank you very much. And now Kari will talk about analyzing e-resource workflows, supplemental practices that help develop workflow efficiencies.
As Dawn stated, ERM systems can help with many aspects of managing the e-resource life cycle, but supplemental processes are often needed and dependent on how ER workflows are handled at your library. With that, understanding the e-resource life cycle at your local institution can help identify tools you may need to help you with specific tasks at each point in the life cycle. As you can see from the ER lifecycle taken from the TERMS website, I've added in different tools you might employ at each stage of the lifecycle. And if you're unfamiliar with TERMS, I've included the URL below. TERMS stands for Techniques in E-Resource Management, and it's definitely worth checking out. If we look at the Investigate step, for example, we can see that you may be using tools like a database trials website to list out active trials that may include a web form to elicit feedback from your users. You may also update collection development wish lists in Excel that your collection management people have access to that may list out current trials with additional information like vendor, pricing, length of trial, and reasons for investigating the resource, such as a request from a faculty member or to look at the resource as a replacement for print. All of these tools, whether you're using wikis, libguides, spreadsheets, Access databases, or Google Drive, may be employed to supplement functionality in ERMS lacks or to aid in communication out to stakeholders, such as collection development committees, consortial working groups, cataloging and acquisitions units, library administration, or as a means to corral data from multiple systems, such as your ERMS, ILS, or third-party software. Many of these tools are absolutely necessary to effectively complete important processes within the e-resource lifecycle, but they can and do contain duplicative and redundant data, like Dawn mentioned, even when you have an ERMS at your disposal. One method of getting a handle on what tools and supplemental processes are necessary for you at your library is to take a step back and analyze and visualize your e-resource workflows. This can be a useful exercise whether you have an ERMS system or not to understand what tools or processes are unnecessary and how your ER workflows may be siloed at your library. In addition, if you do use an ERMS system, a workflow analysis allows for a better understanding of how to implement the system more broadly across your library, especially if you feel the ERMS could help mitigate redundancies and duplication of effort in the area of collection development or acquisitions. Understanding how supplemental processes and tools fit within the ER workflow or are implemented as a result of a workflow can also help create efficiencies and spread ERM skills throughout your library. E-resource librarians, in creating new workflows at their libraries, are often doing so in print-centric workflow environments, which can be challenging as e-resource collections continue to grow exponentially and cover all types of resources, from e-journals to e-books to streaming media to locally created digital content. Often, these tools are employed as a result of your organizational structure, whether you work in a distributed model wherein e-resource workflows cross different units and staff, or within a centralized model where your e-resource workflows take place in one unit dedicated to e-resource management. Also, supplemental processes and tools may be implemented when new e-resource formats are acquired, like e-books or streaming media, causing your existing e-resource workflows to become inadequate. For example, while I worked in a centralized e-resource management structure in my former library, we began purchasing e-books in earnest. This included implementing a PDA for e-books, buying front list collections from publishers, and purchasing single title orders through our book jobber. The centralized e-resource management unit that I managed took this work on initially, but soon found that functionally it fit better within our acquisitions unit, but our acquisitions unit did not have familiarity with e-resource management techniques. We decided to dissect our e-book workflows to understand how to transition certain types of e-book acquisitions over to our acquisitions unit. Through this workflow analysis, we highlighted interdependencies between selectors, acquisition staff, cataloging staff, and our e-resource management staff in order to focus on any bottlenecks or miscommunication. We also had each staff person involved in e-book work explain what they did and why to detect redundancies and duplication of effort across the workflow and across units. And lastly, we created new workflows collaboratively based on each unit's functional responsibility that included staff from all of technical services. This slide here is an example of our ebook workflow for purchasing subject-based frontlist collections directly from publishers. What we found was one issue that we kept running against was conceptually whether these type of purchases were standing orders or firm orders, and if so, we didn't know whether we were going to continue to buy these subject front lists from the publishers from year to year. This was a decision point in the workflow in terms of how we expended funds and managed funds, how the collection management librarians selected their titles across their book selection process, also how these purchases impacted our approval plan, and how staff within the e-resource management and acquisitions units were able to best handle the orders and receive the titles. With this workflow analysis in hand, we found that in our centralized e-resource management unit, we were not well positioned to handle these type of ebook purchases, regardless if they were standing orders or firm orders. We also discovered that none of our internal e-resource management tools could sufficiently assist the acquisitions staff with taking on this new work, as most of our e-resource tools were all geared toward traditional e-resource acquisition processes for databases and e-journals, essentially. Luckily, we discovered Coral as a supplemental tool to assist us with ebooks. Coral is an open-source e-resource management system created by Notre Dame Libraries. They have a module called Resources that actually includes a workflow utility that helps you operationalize your workflows. We used Coral to solve issues that we were having with our ebooks, and we were able to use Coral to help us transition these type of ebook frontlist acquisitions purchases over to our acquisitions unit. This in turn helped improve our overall ebook workflows. In Coral, you are able to define workflows by acquisition type, format, and resource type that are customized based on your local processes. As steps are defined in your workflow, they are assigned to individual staff or groups. These assigned steps or tasks then become part of each staff's profile in the system and tracked in individual queues that staff see upon logging into the system. Notifications can be set up as part of each task assignment to alert staff of new tasks. These notifications can also act as an approval mechanism, such as funding approval, in addition to serving as task assignments. Coral's workflow utility is a tool that we desired as part of our ERMS, but wasn't available. So we used it alongside our e-resource management system and ILS to manage all of our ebook workflows. Broadly speaking, the type of workflow utility available in Coral are being promised as part of these new library management systems Dawn mentioned coming out from the major ILS and ERMS vendors. As more of our collections move electronic, we are going to have to grapple with managing materials that are often intangible, making it difficult to understand who is responsible for what task or where within the ER lifecycle it might make sense to consolidate or distribute work. Coral is a supplemental tool that helped us understand our workflows and define them better through a workflow analysis. On the screen is my contact information. If you have questions, please write them into the questions box, and I will be happy to take them at the end of the presentations. Next, Laura Wrubel will talk about e-resource management systems and user interfaces.
Hi, everyone. Our webinar is focused so far on managing e-resources from the staff side. Kari, as you heard, just spoke about tools available to help with these critical workflows. At the same time, supporting discovery and access to e-resources is the main reason we're doing this work, to acquire and manage e-resources efficiently. I'm going to speak to how e-resource management systems interact with patron-facing interfaces. Some of the many user interfaces we support include our catalog, a discovery layer, a link resolver screen, a databases list, a journals list, libguides, perhaps you have more at your library. But how well do our management tools allow us to keep these user interfaces accurate and up to date? If you work with e-resources, you're familiar with the long list of steps that have to happen when you set up a new e-resource, cancel it, or change vendors. And getting these changes to display properly in user interfaces may involve interacting with many different systems, and we've heard a bit about that already today. There are a number of possible strategies we might take in managing these steps for setting up user access. So one is setting up external workflow support. Apologies for that. Let me just go back. Setting up external workflow support. In this approach, because you can't just make a change in one system to update everything, you use an external tool to make sure all of the steps occur in the process of making e-resources available. So you might, for example, chart workflows and then manually follow that workflow using a paper or an online checklist. We saw one of the workflow charts that Kari's library created to document their workflows, and we've done similar exercises here as well. And this helped us delineate the various steps and handoffs that may occur in the process of acquiring and setting up a new e-resource as it passes from team to team. We've also used statuses in our ERM to track e-resources as they move through our processes. As Kari described earlier, more systematically, you might rely on workflow management tools like Coral to track each step and to alert you as a resource moves through your acquisition queue and eventually your activation queue. Another approach you might take to simplify the interaction between your management tools and your user interfaces is to collapse your workflows. This approach reduces the number of steps and therefore possible problems in access by relying on built-in integration among your tools, choosing products, for example, from the same vendor. So you might select an ERM, a journals list, and a link resolver, and even a discovery layer. They're all based on the same knowledge base. Or you might take a hybrid approach where you both manage your workflows in the tools you think best and seek ways to collapse your workflow through the products you use. Basically, each library must factor their staffing, technology expertise and support, budget, available vendor options, and last, but certainly not least, patron usability and user needs to come to an effective approach. At my library, we've drawn on all of these approaches. We have external workflow support in the form of workflow charts and using status fields in our ERM. We've also collapsed the workflow by moving our link resolver to the same vendor as our ERM, thereby reducing the need to maintain two separate knowledge bases. But we're increasingly turning to APIs to inform our user interfaces, to pull e-resources information into those screens, no matter which system the data itself is in. An API is an application programming interface. It's basically a way that one system or program can talk to another, whether they're from different vendors or open source applications. It's a supported way to get at data or services in another system, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later. Let's return to that set of all of the various patron interfaces we have and look at how they interact with our management tools. On the patron side, which is the orange boxes here, you see many of the user interfaces our patrons may use. On the staff side, in the purple boxes, are some of the many systems in which our e-resource management data may reside. It might live in a link resolver knowledge base or an ERM knowledge base, your ILS, or Coral or some other sort of checklist utility you might use. And I haven't even put everything up here like document delivery systems or troubleshooting systems, some of the other tools that Don and Kari mentioned earlier. There are different ways these tools fit together. Some tools have a front end and a back end inherently integrated. For example, the link resolver has a knowledge base of holdings. That knowledge base, or could be your ERM knowledge base, also supports a journals list. Those are tied together. Sometimes these tools are from the same vendor, but sometimes not. In some cases, we have to cross-load data from one system to another, either manually or in a scheduled automated way. So for example, you may load records from your ERM into your catalog, or you may pull database info into your databases list and journals lists from another knowledge base. Often you can automate this cross-loading. A vendor could pick up data updates, or you could push updates So for example, most discovery layers get nightly catalog updates exported from the ILS. Or your discovery layer might also be able to pick up your link resolver holdings by grabbing the Google Scholar activations file that your knowledge base puts out there. Where end user interfaces can share knowledge bases, you don't need to move data around so much. These systems are inherently integrated. And this is where collapsing workflows and systems may help. You can see here how having your link resolver knowledge base be the same as your ERM and supporting other interfaces like your journals list, you've reduced the amount of updating and transfer needed. Where available, APIs can help your patron interfaces that are separate from your ERM or ILS to get data they need. APIs can programmatically connect and collect data from more than one system. So your discovery layer may retrieve holdings from your ILS in real time through any number of mechanisms. Or your catalog might get data from the link resolver knowledge base using its API. Next generation library systems offer some solutions to keeping user interfaces in sync. In this model, all of the tools are part of the same system. They're internally integrated. And Don mentioned a number of those that are out there right now or emerging right now. The systems you use to manage e-resources in this model are all in the same system as the system that supports your discovery interfaces. And going with an approach where your tools are all internally integrated has significant benefits for streamlining your workflows and keeping all of your resources in sync. However, it does also expose you to the risks of vendor lock-in. Vendor lock-in is a situation where your usage of a vendor suite of systems substantially raises the costs of switching in part or in the entirety to another solution. In a cloud-based, hosted, integrated system, it can also be difficult to introduce other tools into the mix. You bought into the Lego system, and as well as those pieces fit together, you can't add on Lincoln logs or magnetiles. Also significantly, in a one-stop management system, can you get your data out if you wish to migrate? It's hard unless your system offers APIs. APIs are particularly useful for connecting up user interfaces with your knowledge bases and other data, and eventually I hope other components of our next library systems. Even if you don't have a lot of tech expertise, you can still create some useful tools if your data is available in a way that another system can get at it. APIs also allow vendors to work together, which is something we in libraries should encourage. As an example of where we're using an API right now, my library, we've developed a web interface that has a URL or a web page for every item in our catalog, pulling data from our ILS and other sources. We link to this app from our discovery layer and other places where we think it's more useful or user-friendly than our native catalog. In addition to showing basic bibliographic data and consortial holdings, it pulls holdings and date coverage info from our link resolver using the link resolver API. No cross-loading needed here. The links are generated in real time. That's what those blue full text buttons are that you see there. We even create pages for items we don't own using data from the WorldCat API. And then this tool is even an API itself. You can see the data in JSON format that it can make available to other apps. APIs give us the flexibility to display our data to users in the places we would like to. In conclusion, even in a next generation cloud-based library system, there will be tools we want to use outside of that nicely internally integrated system. These could be staff tool or patron tools. To get the best of both worlds, we need to ask for APIs to access our data in standards-based rather than proprietary formats where possible, both for creating local tools but also to help them interact better with other external vendor interfaces. And it's gratifying to hear that most of those vendors that Don had mentioned and the open source systems are developing these kinds of APIs and providing them in next generation systems. We also need the ability to export our data, not just for migrating should we wish to do so, but to conduct other kinds of analysis or use the data in other contexts. We can't anticipate all of the ways we wish to leverage our e-resources management data, so making sure we have the keys we need when those situations arise is essential. In this webinar, we've talked about many aspects of improving e-resources workflows and selecting staff tools and the consequences for improving our user interfaces. Because really providing what our patrons need in a timely and cost-effective way in a reliable and user-friendly environment is the ultimate goal, isn't it? Thank you.
Hello, this is Maria Pincus, your host again. I see one question for the presenters, but if you have any more, please type them into the box that says questions. Stephanie Adams asks, how do you handle perpetual access after you have canceled a title? In your ERM, Portico, clocks?
This is Kari. I can talk about what we did in our ERMS at my former library. We had a separate status for that to show that it was canceled, but we had perpetual access. And then we were members of Portico, and we had a lock server set up. So we had in the knowledge base those different things set up as well. So for instance, the link resolver for the titles that were available in Portico was directed towards the Portico archive for those particular titles.
This is Dawn. In our system, we have a license terms section where we have notes about about perpetual access. We're also a Portico member, and we do something very similar to what Kari described in terms of directing users to those sites.
Okay, yes, did Laura want to say something? No?
No, we take similar approaches to Kari and Dawn. I didn't have anything else to add. Thank you.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other question. I know we've been having some problem with audio, so we may not have too many people here, but if you wish to ask any other questions, we still have some time. I have a new question here from Melissa DeSantis. Where can we learn about API?
API is an acronym standing for Application Programming Interface. So it's a generic term that refers to sort of machine-to-machine protocol for connecting up with information. So actually, I think even ALA is running a course right now on how to experiment with APIs and work with APIs. So it's a technology that you can read about in the library arena or in the broader technology area as well.
For those who are using Coral, is that in addition to another ERM?
This is Kari. When we implemented Coral at my former library, we did so as a supplemental tool on top of our e-resource management system. And really what we were just using was the resources module. They have a full suite of e-resource management modules that you can install and use. We only use the resources module for those workflow utility and trying to get a handle on our ebook workflows. We actually, though, did end up using it to manage some of our other workflows, so for our databases and e-journals. Particularly, we use Coral as a means to automate the request process from our collection managers when they wanted to start new subscriptions for databases and e-journals.
Can any of you talk a little more about the tools you use for troubleshooting and keeping track of tech support tickets with your ERM, discovery tools, etc.?
Sure, this is Laura. I think all of us will probably have something to say in answer to this one. We use a combination of approaches here. We have an open source ticketing system. It's called OS Ticket here, but we're experimenting with other ticketing systems as well to help with primarily staff questions that come in for troubleshooting requests. And that's nice because a number of departments in the library use it, and we pass tickets off among departments in technical services and LIT, our IT department as needed. We also use Google Forms. They're great. They feed into a Google spreadsheet, and when things come in, that can automatically notify us that new reports have come in, and that can be sometimes a little bit more patron-friendly or more familiar interface to patrons who want to report problems. So we have our link resolver screens and our discovery layer link to a Google form, and then we're playing a little bit with Google App scripts as well to send us and patrons some basic information in an automated way based on that kind of submission. But there are a number of tools out there. Kari and Dawn?
This is Kari. At my former library, we were part of the OIT ticketing system. They use Lotus Notes, and in it we had essentially just our own group queue where we would have problem reports sent to us through a web form that we had set up in our CMS. And the nice thing about using the ticketing system through OIT was that if we got, for instance, questions that were outside of our portfolio, for instance, sometimes we'd get questions about their ID not being able to check out a book or something like that, and those we could kick it over to our access services department to solve. So there was also like this routing piece of the software. What I am looking for now is actually a troubleshooting ticket service, and we've just discovered here that LibAnswers, which is part of the LibGuide suite of services, is now going to offer sort of this group queuing functionality, which we're going to look into to implement here as our e-resource ticketing troubleshooting support system.
This is Dawn. We use a combination of things. We do a lot in email and group lists to share information across public services and tech services and resolving questions and gathering information. We also use the JIRA system for troubleshooting, and it's a ticketing system, and that way we can make people watchers. We have many libraries, branch libraries, and we're trying to look for a broader solution. I'm looking very much for the panacea. Haven't found it yet, but this has been a very interesting discussion. Thank you.
Is Coral a turnkey application? How much technical support tinkering is necessary?
This is Kari. I think with every open source system, you're going to need somebody with some systems knowledge. We had support from our consortial office in terms of implementing the software on their server, and they would update the software when updates came out. But basically we had to monitor when the updates come out and ask them to run them. With that, we were able to use the resources module pretty much out of the box. You do have to customize, for instance, when you're setting up your workflows in Coral, you do have to customize them based on what your local processes are for, how your local processes work. But beyond that, we didn't do much more tinkering with the system. I mean, it was ready for us to use. But then again, we were only using one module of the whole suite. I know that the Coral folks run a robust listserv, and they put out when all of their updates are going to be coming out. So there's a good community working with that system. So there is resources to tap into if you're interested in the system.
Okay, well, I don't see any other questions coming in. We do apologize for those of you who have had sound problems on and off. If you're still with us, I guess that you have been listening to us, being able to hear most of it. This will be recorded, and I guess now we can just move towards our conclusion. We'll get some thank yous here for the presenters. Okay, so here are our activities that are coming up. We want to thank Don, Kari, and Laura for a very interesting webinar. And our thanks go as well to each of you for attending this webinar today. If you have an idea for a webinar, feel free to submit a proposal using the online form found on the ALCTS website. ALCTS offers an array of online learning opportunities. On the screen, you can see the upcoming ALCTS webinars. ALCTS also offers popular web courses of 4 weeks duration, such as Fundamentals of Collection Assessment and Fundamentals of Preservation, which are the ones that are coming up. And the Continuing Education Committee schedules e-forums free of charge on a monthly basis, such as the Public Services for Technical Services Librarians, which will be on October 22nd. Actually, it was yesterday, so I'm sorry about that. Anyway, ALCTS members as well as non-members are welcome to participate in these e-forums. Please visit the ALCTS website for details about all our continuing education offerings. As we conclude this afternoon's broadcast, I would like to thank Eva Sorrell and Iping Chen Gaffey, members of the ALCTS Continuing Education Committee's Technical Support Subcommittee, as well as Julie Reese and Vicki Grudzinski in the ALCTS office for their assistance. We hope that this webinar has been of interest to you and look forward to welcoming you at another ALCTS webinar in the future. Good afternoon.